Welcome to the Success is Subjective podcast series brought to you by collegealternative.org, presented by Lilly Consulting. I'm your host, Joanna Lilly. In today's episode, I had the pleasure of interviewing Tracy Hopkins. Tracy is a story chaser, a change agent, and an illuminator. Throughout her career, her personal approach has been shaped by the fascination of human behavior, the extraordinary capacity of human connections, and the courageous journeys individuals embark upon to dig deep, lean in, and tap into their full potential. Tracy strives to create platforms and opportunities that invite people to share their stories as a way to cultivate a culture of truly investing in one another. Her passion leads her to assist people in identifying personal values in order to discover purpose and meaning, acknowledgement of authentic self, and become agents of change. Now, Tracy has worked within the field of private behavioral and mental health care for over 20 years and is currently serving as the business development director, as well as the inclusion and belonging specialist at Outback Therapeutic Expeditions, a premier wilderness therapy program dedicated to bringing families back together. You see that play on words there? Tracy is also the founder of Dare to Rise, a change consulting firm focused on engaging and empowering individuals and organizations to initiate transformation. Her various lived experiences, coupled with the expansive roles held within outdoor education, high adventure programming, wilderness therapy, and residential treatment centers, have served as catalysts to become a story chaser. By chasing the story, Tracy believes people form an undeniable bond and a deeper desire to move through the world as a community. I cannot wait any longer for this interview. We have to jump in. Here's Tracy. All right, Tracy, this is also taking place at NATSAP.
Yes.
We're sitting right next to a really, what feels like serene waterfall.
Yes. No, this is so helpful. Like whatever anxiety I had prior to doing this, it was meant to be that we sat by running water.
It's washing away as we speak. Or maybe it's building.
I know. No, it's washing away. It is washing away. Yes. Yes.
All right, we're already being goofy. Okay,
I know.
We're going to jump in though because I have a couple specific questions, but I'm always like the interview takes its different twists and turns based on a person's journey. So we're going to start with this. Tell the listeners, where did you grow up?
Yeah.
And then what were you hearing from your family as well as kind of the community in which you were raised about post-secondary education?
Let's see. A couple of different things, right? I'm 44 years old, and every time somebody asks me where I grew up, I naturally go to the place of having been born and raised in South Korea. My dad was in the military, met my mom there, was stationed there, and so we grew up going to school on the military base, but we lived off base. So I am steeped in Korean traditions and within that culture. So I lived there till I was about 10. And so again, I think for me in my household, and most likely within my culture that I was in which I was raised, it's all about education, post-secondary. Like there is no finishing. In a sense, right? And academia is really a high priority or a priority, and within my own household, right? Because obviously my father is an African-American male who wasn't a part of the Korean culture, and yet that was very important to him. So then we moved to the U.S., and I would say, I think the way in which it was, the message still was like post-secondary isn't even an option. It was just something that I was gonna do. I think the way in which it was, the end message stayed the same, but the process and the content kind of changed for me. And what I mean by that is being a kid of color in a southern Illinois small town coal mining community, having come from a different country, me and my siblings, we stuck out like a sore thumb. And so I think one of the ways in which I felt that I was supposed to be where I was supposed to be was in academia. I did well. I got a lot of high praise for my work. And so that was the place that I focused on. And so that's what I mean by like the end, message was still the same. It's just the way in which I was perceiving it just changed a little bit based on the people and the place I was growing up.
And I'm trying to like visualize this too, to go from a base in South Korea to then small town, Illinois.
Yeah.
I imagine that there's extra layers too of like just that acculturation of, maybe I'm like making this assumption because I've never been to South Korea,
Sure.
but I'm just thinking through like even just like, being in a military family
Yes.
on an international base.
Yes.
And then like there's so many intersections.
Yeah.
And my head's kind of exploding actually right now. Like the more I'm like talking out loud, I'm like, what? And that. And
Yeah.
Whoa. And that.
Right. Well, and
Wow.
what's fascinating is like, I think sometimes some of the stereotypes can come into play for some folks when they hear that my mom is Korean, my dad is African American. Sometimes, not all times, but the initial assumption is that my mom was the one who was like, what's that terminology, like a tiger mom. And again, lived experiences have a lot to do with our perception and our, the way in which we engage in the world. And my mom was an orphan at the age of 9, had 2 younger siblings. And so, yes, she knew the importance of going to school and doing well, but that was not her priority. Her priority was like, how do we show love and belonging and communicate that, she's there for us. And so she was very much like, whatever is good for you, that's what, college is important. And do you know love? Have you felt love? Like that was her priority. Whereas my father, he was born in 1936, grew up in Southern Illinois as well as Mississippi, right? Lost his father, I think, at the age of 16. No, lost his mom at the age of 16, lost his dad at 22. And, he's grown up in a world with systemic injustices and systemic oppression. And so his way, and he was a smart man, right? And so academia was really important to him. And he wanted to make sure that anything that he could do to help kind of shield us from what he's experienced, that's why it was just so important for us to do well in school, present ourselves in a specific manner, all of those things. So, yeah.
So with that, and I know you said kind of it wasn't with that lens, from kind of your dad being the one really driving the like post-secondary is not a conversation of question.
Sure.
It is the conversation of, well, where are you going and what are you doing, right? Or like, why are you deciding to pursue what you're doing, but knowing that you're going somewhere and doing something, which is contraindicated compared to what your mom is.
Right.
I see her perspective
Yep.
is, I mean, the whole sidebar comment, her approach to like what is important for you as a young person in life is the exact reason why this podcast exists.
Yeah.
Because we don't talk about.
We don't.
It doesn't matter if you don't go to school. Like, do you know love?
Right.
Do you like feel like you can communicate?
Right.
Like, can you not just survive but thrive?
Yeah. I appreciate that piece of just not like the acknowledgement that it's not talked about as much as we should be talking about it, because all of this is happening in a household where, like, my father suffered from PTSD from being, in the military and going to war, not to mention just lived experiences as a black man in America. And then him being in the military, like I knew the expectations, but there was no context that was provided, right? And again, my mom showed us, but there was no real communication about all of these things. And it's not until I got older, and especially working in this field, therapeutic community, that I began to understand more of why they were the way that they were. But as kids, we're left with what we are experiencing and not necessarily having an outlet to process it. So then I created all of these narratives and my own expectations. And so, the pleaser tendencies, the high achieving, the perfectionism, all of that came into play. Yes. Isn't that interesting? Like, it wasn't until later in my adult life that I had to really kind of shed that version of me. And it takes it's ongoing personal work. And who I was even 5 years ago is not the person that people meet today, Yeah.
And I feel like we could just end the conversation right there. So profound. Okay, but I do want to fill in the gaps between, like being a high school student in Southern Illinois to this person who you are right now.
Sure.
So why don't you actually, I'm not necessarily looking for the where you went, but I'm kind of looking for the, like, what was your path, right? And depending on what your path looked like, I'm also really trying to paint this picture for all guests that, like, whatever path we thought we were going to have at 18, not realistic. I'm just going to throw that out there. I feel like that's an okay generalization to make. Life is very curvy compared to this linear, again, really rigid kind of plan that oftentimes our underdeveloped brain thinks that we're going to take. So what was your young adult experience like?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Again, going back to the very structured household that I was raised in. When I got to college, I think a lot of people experience this. But again, at the time, I have no idea. I went from whatever it was that I was pursuing and doing wasn't ever grounded in what I wanted and what I hoped to explore, because it was so ingrained to me, like, this is just what you do. And then when I got into my undergrad and had, like, more of the freedom to choose and that structure that was neatly, I almost said bound, but it was there for me to operate within, was no longer there. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know where to go. And, it's one of those things that I don't think that I've shared that often, but I went from being in AP courses in high school, doing really well and doing my work. I got into my undergrad, and I think I was on academic probation twice between my freshman and junior year of college. It's when I was introduced to alcohol. And just, again, there was a sense of freedom that was so liberating, and I didn't have any kind of skills in place to help me figure out how to just manage my livelihood, right? And so there was a lot of stumbling and failing. I think I changed my major like 5-7 times. But again, it's that narrative that plays, like, you're supposed to know what you want to do in life.
Which is such bullshit.
Which is such bullshit.
Let's throw that out there.
I know that now. But, like, again, it's like, well, what's wrong with me? Why do I not have my stuff together like everyone else? Because in my head, everyone else, knew what they were doing. And so that starts to chip away at you. I think I started out as a business administrative major. And ultimately, after, again, it was just the end of junior year, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to figure out what I'm doing and where I want to go. And somebody told me about hotel and tourism, and I was like, well, I like people. I like to hang out. Let's do that. And then I shared this story in different platforms about how somebody introduced me to a 9-day backpacking course that was under the umbrella of recreation management. And I was, I worked 2 to 3 jobs. I was on, grants and scholarships. And so I was like, okay, if I can get this 3-credit course that I only have to show up for 9 days, awesome. It fulfills my, 12 credit hour, requirement to get scholarships and grants. I was not prepared for it to change my trajectory and become a lover of the outdoors and nature, because again, it was the space in which there's just a lot more freedom for me to just roam and be. I think it's probably the first time I felt like I could be messy and it was acceptable, metaphorically and figuratively, right?
Yep.
So that just kind of, that is what got me into the work that I'm doing now. But that was college. Like college was rough.
But you said that changed your trajectory. So here you are, kind of like hospitality, tourism. Maybe that's like the umbrella of the school that you're in, and then you realize, oh, there's like a recreation tourism track. And true to form, we as college students look and say, oh, 3 credit class, 9 days, like easy, right? I'm over here like totally grinning. So I'm like, you probably had no idea.
No idea. I had no idea. No, the first day, Southern Illinois, so, compared to places in which there are real mountains, Southern Illinois has Shawnee National Forest, and they're anthills compared to them.
But you were backpacking.
But we were backpacking. The first night we got there, Southern Illinois had the biggest snowfall that they had in like years. And I was the kid who was like, I'm leaving. I'm out. Like, I'm in my tent. My classmates who are on there is like, they're scraping the snow away from the front of the tent so that we can get out. And I was like, I know where we parked. I know where we got dropped off. Like, I am out of here. But it was the most incredible scenery when I stepped out. And I remember I was smitten. I was like, I would have never been able to understand what the meaning of pristine and beauty in nature had I not been there. And then that was it. So I appreciate that experience, all for the 3 credit hours that I needed to get money.
Right?
Yeah.
So, okay, fast forward, that changes, right?
Sure.
It's literally like a degree of the needle. So now your course is completely changed.
Yep.
Not course in the sense of college coursework, though I'm sure that was probably a part of it, but really like literally your career course. So from there, did you immediately land in wilderness therapy, or like kind of fill in the gaps for some of those like post-graduate employment experiences?
Yeah. So I didn't go immediately into wilderness therapy, but I definitely went into the outdoors. So it was more doing outdoor education. And so I work for different places, working with kids within various school systems. And when I think back on it, I'm just like, how did I teach a workshop holding snakes and different kinds of critters that I am so afraid of? But there are like, these adoring 6th grade, kids who are just so excited. And so, I played the role. But it was more of working in a place where I still got to go home at night and had a steady paycheck. But then there was the craving to go back and like really be immersed in the wilderness. And so that's when I found Outward Bound School in North Carolina. And so that was really great because it was a combination of like the educational component with high adventure programming. And you got to spend, weeks with students. So you really get to see the development and the bond and the messiness. And I think what eventually led me to wilderness therapy was in our moments of being like, we had to keep a certain itinerary. Like we went backpacking, then we had to go to a, 3-day whitewater, canoeing progression to then a 3-day rock climbing. And so I'm a product, I always talk about like I'm a product of being raised in chaos. And so I learned very quickly to be on high alert and be observant of my surroundings and people, right? Which then really helped in my career because as we were doing these high adventure programming, what I noticed was, missed opportunities to really process some of the human behaviors and the connections that could have happened. But because we were so on a strict itinerary, we just that wasn't a part of the agenda.
Yeah.
And so somebody was just like, oh, you're talking about wilderness therapy. And I was like, what? And he's like, well, you're in the middle of the woods. You're working with kids that are coming in for various reasons. But the whole thing is like, you look at yourself and you figure out what's yours to keep and what are the external factors. And I think you'll like it. So I found a spot to do a hiring seminar. I didn't think that I was going to get the job at one point because one of the instructors came up to me and asked me like how it was going, and I broke down and wept. And I was just like, essentially you're being interviewed when you're doing the hiring seminar, right? And he was just like, okay, what's coming up for you? And I said that I was just blown away. I thought that I was walking into the space to help kids. I was not prepared for the inner work and like holding up a mirror and the language that was used that helped me identify some of my experiences as a young child. And that was back in 2004. And then since then, I've just been in this world. It's just.
I just did the math in my head. That was what that face was.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. All the while, I would say I'm still grappling with the perfectionism. I'm still grappling with making sure that people liked me and having poor boundaries. Like, I'm still struggling in that world. I think it wasn't until 2014 when I finally decided to go to graduate school. I call it my 2 years of wilderness therapy. It was a beautiful cohort where I felt trust and acceptance, and it was a very low risk, high gain scenario. All of my inner saboteurs were coming out to play because I realized this was the first time in my life that I had ever gone after something that I wanted. Everything else, jobs, relationships, they all just kind of happened, and somebody was just like, I was either in the right place or the right time, or somebody thought that I'd be good. I had never until 2014, I could not think of a single thing that I decided this is what I want and I want to go after it until I applied to graduate school. So naturally, I got scared shitless.
Of course.
And I was like, I can't, this can't be. So I was working really hard to sabotage it. And my professors were like, nope, you're not leaving. You were supposed to be here. So anyway, I worked through a lot of stuff in the 2 years of graduate school.
And just out of curiosity, what was your master's in?
Clinical social work.
Okay.
Yeah.
So really, like, they held the mirror up to you for 2 years.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Was there ever a vision where you were like, maybe I'll be a wilderness therapist?
No. I actually...
You were quick to say no. I thought for sure there'd be like maybe a little more hesitation.
No. I think the reason why, again, it's about outside perceptions. It's battling the imposter syndrome, right? I was like, if I got these letters behind me, people may believe that I'm good enough to be in this world, right? And so the reason I knew that I wanted the clinical components so that I can use it in the work that I'm doing. And I picked social work specifically because it wouldn't just kind of pigeonhole me as a therapist because there's so many different avenues you can go into. And so I was like, okay, I can still get the information. And now as I'm even saying it out loud, I was like, that was probably a way for me to like protect myself. Again, like, well, what if I'm not good as a therapist? Then I can be like, oh, I could do some, macro work and do the program development or organizational development. Anyway, yeah.
That's actually how I always like kind of differentiated social work from therapy. I always felt like social work really was the macro, right?
Yes.
What's the systems? Are we still going to train you on how to do therapy? Absolutely.
Yes.
But compared to a therapist, the therapist is only focused on that individual or the group or the family work or whatever. And so it's really, really small systems.
Yeah.
But there's very little to no training on like that larger vision of like, how do we do more community-centered programming or whatever? It really is just like the one-on-one work.
Yeah.
So interesting.
Yes.
You're okay. You're just... I don't have to hold the mirror up for you. I feel like you're just like, here we are in the Arizona sun. You've got like a freaking like baking sheet out. Like,
I know.
Okay.
Well, just going back to what you said earlier, like, I think about those moments of like, gosh, if I would have had these conversations sooner, just think of the impact that could have happened earlier on. So I talk a lot about now, like, I actually said it earlier today. I was like, I want to be able to give other people permission to be messy, because I'm being messy. I think that, it's like, once I feel comfortable in the skin that I'm in, and I'm not afraid to shine my own light, I think that has a domino effect on other people who's just like, yes, that I can relate to that. That's normal for me. And if Tracy's doing it, then I feel freer in doing that. So having these conversations early on, so that folks can see that it's not just one specific storyline that we're all trying to chase after. I don't know.
Again, exactly why this podcast exists.
Yeah.
Like why is it that, this is more of a rhetorical question. I'm just kind of complaining out loud.
Yeah.
Why is it that we continue to have this solo narrative?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's the path.
Yep.
Let's continue to fit a shitload of square pegs in really narrow round holes.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes. Yeah. Well, or the fact that like somebody sitting across from you that may look really different from you and grew up in a different space, when we really start to listen to understand and hear people's stories and their experiences, all of a sudden I found myself being like, I would have never guessed that I would have had anything in common with you, but you just shared this beautiful, messy, vulnerable part of your life that rings true for me. And I think those are the moments where we create some, incredible bonds with people, and I become invested in them and they become invested in me. So that's a little tangent, but having conversations earlier is so pivotal.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I feel like we could end on that too.
Yeah.
Okay. Just like the title for this is going to be "And Another Mic Drop." I'm being goofy.
All the mic drops.
Yeah, all the mic drops.
All the mic drops.
Okay, so you got your master's in clinical social work, but that's not the title of the job that you have. So just let's do a quick shameless plug. Like, what are you actually doing?
Yeah. So my official title that I got hired to do is business development at Outback Therapeutic Expeditions. And over the years, what has also been included is an inclusion and belonging specialist. And again, I've worked for different companies. They're all great with great humans. I don't feel like where I ended up when I emerged from graduate school, just knowing what my values were and who I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up in the world, I don't think it was coincidence that I got reacquainted with Outback. And a lot of what I think that the work we're doing at Outback matches who I am as an individual. And one of the things that I need more than anything is creativity and the freedom to have things change and switch up. And so I also think that business development is a title that just gets thrown around. And so I will say business development for me, the way that I see it, is not just marketing. It's about quality assurance. It's about understanding what we're doing and making sure that the actions that we're taking matches up with what we're doing, right? It's about connecting with the humans that are working within the company to figure out, like, A, what gets them excited about what they're doing, and then B, how does their purpose align with the purpose of the company. And so it's always going back to our why, and just making sure that in all realms of the business that we're doing that. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have been a frontline staff in admissions, a program manager, and held these various roles. And so it is helpful for me to bring those perspectives in, and went to graduate school for the clinical component. But, again, that's how I see business development. And then the relationships that we're nurturing with people outside of Outback. And then the inclusion and belonging specialist really came into play because one of the things that transpired from graduate school is just, again, because I did the work of getting better at not allowing the opinions of others to be louder than the opinion that I held of myself. I became more vocal. Like, these are not thoughts and experiences that just came about because of graduate school. It was just that I learned how to use my voice. So I think in doing more work around diversity, equity, and inclusion, for me, I recognize that really what I'm searching for and I want other people to have is a deep sense of belonging. And when you are someone who sits within the margins or at the intersections, and you have navigated a world that continues to covertly tell you that you don't belong, I want to figure out how to change that experience for many folks. And the way in which we do that is to have conversations. So knowing that we work with kids of color, knowing that we have parents from various different cultural backgrounds coming in, I think it's important for us to have a level of awareness right out of the gate. So we do a lot of trainings, weekly trainings. We work with the field staff, have conversations with the clinicians. And so those are the things that I get to do at Outback. I get to have my creative outlet. I get to incorporate my passion work of belonging work. And I get to show up in spaces with all versions of me as opposed to what has been deemed acceptable versions of me. Yeah.
It sounds, as you're describing this, it feels very much like this job was created for you.
Yeah.
Completely.
That's why I say it was not a coincidence. And I knew about Outback before. The executive director, McKay Devereaux, and I were friends well before I started working there. So it wasn't like, they weren't new to me. I just was able to see Outback in a different way. And to see myself reflected in the work that they were doing, it was a no-brainer. And then just the permission to continue to grow and mess up has been really helpful. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to ask you this because I ask all of my guests.
Yeah.
Do you see yourself as successful?
You know what? Again, yes, I do. And it's because I had to come up with a different definition of successful. I think that if I was measuring myself against what the older definition, I would have been like, I'm 44. It wasn't that long ago that I just got my master's. Like, I am divorced. Like, all of those things, right? I would have said, no, I don't really know if there's anything I've been successful in. I think my new definition of successful is that whole piece of like willing to learn more about why I am the way that I am, and figuring out how best to show up in this space as my whole self. Brene Brown, I know a long time ago, she said something about like, standing in your sacred ground, like not shrinking, but also not puffing up. I feel like that is what I think of as like, okay, I am successful because I am doing a better job of that. I'm also successful because I don't know what I don't know. And I want to expand my periphery. I want to know the things that I don't know. And I want to not stop growing. And so, yeah, I'm laughing inside because I was just like, you asked me that question, and without reservation, I said yes. And when I think about my old version, there was no way I would have said that so quickly. Yeah. So that's why I'm successful right there. Yeah.
Oh, goodness.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you could give one piece of advice then,
Yeah.
and I do feel like you've actually really sprinkled in some nuggets of wisdom throughout your own personal journey, which absolutely translates to somebody that's listening to this. But if you could give something else as a piece of advice to a young person, and maybe it's, Tracy at 18 getting ready to go to college because it's what was never really discussed. It was automatically assumed. And here you are kind of coming from that place of going with the flow because it's kind of, maybe I'm bumbling and fumbling here, but I'm thinking through the idea of like, I'm doing this because I'm pleasing somebody else. It's not really for me.
Right.
So if you could think of maybe a young, and maybe that's too specific. Let me back up and say, if you just want to be like super vague and like just say like, give a random piece of advice to all young adults that are kind of at this precipice of emerging adulthood, right?
Yeah.
Like whether it's turning 18 and being officially legal as an adult, or just like the world in which young adulthood exists today. Yeah. I really am rambling. So now you've got like 3 different prompts for how you want to go about answering them.
I might ramble too.
Okay.
Then.
We're being messy together.
Yes, we're being messy together. I think about the first thing that pops up for me is if you ever find yourself in a situation where you have lots of questions because you don't understand what's being said and what's going on, and you think that you're the only one, I promise you, you're not. And if you're able to somehow lean into that and ask that question, again, there might not be it might not be the entire room, but there's going to be at least one other person who's going to be like, thank you so much for asking that. I was completely lost. So I think about that. I also think about just exposure, the willingness to explore, that this is a journey of figuring things out. And I don't even know if I want to use that terminology. Like, do we ever really figure things out? I think to expect us, especially when our brains have not even fully developed, to know exactly who we want to be and how we want to show up is not necessarily setting a lot of people up for experiencing a world of joy, right? And so just keeping that reminder of just ask questions, go and immerse yourself in situations that you might not normally immerse yourself in, go experience different things in life. I think those are the things that have helped me over the years either question certain things and or happily yet accidentally figure out that I apparently love something. And it's in those moments, I think, that you get a deeper understanding of what it is that you might want. Yeah. So, yeah.
Okay, so I think it's important to wrap this up with how the heck people can get connected to you. 1, because maybe they're just curious about Outback.
Yes.
2, also maybe they're just interested in either sharing gratitude for listening to your story and wanting to say like they appreciate you, or just to connect with you because maybe they need you in their life. Not serendipitously.
Yes.
It is serendipitous. Like, come on.
Yes.
So how can people connect with you?
I think the easiest way is to send me an email, and it's Tracy, Tracy, at outbacktreatment.com. Yeah.
And we'll make sure that that's in the show notes so people know. And I think the biggest takeaway for me, actually, I'm going to throw this out here because as you've been talking the entire time, I've just continued to think about how, these interviews, every single one is different, even though I've got the same structure. Yeah. Right. And so I never know what to expect, but it's so important for me as the interviewer to be okay being messy. Yeah. Because I think there are some times where I'm almost like the marksman, where I'm almost like, I'm thinking ahead of where is it that I need to set up the target, when in reality I just need to be true to form with these noise canceling headphones. I should just be way more mindful and present with my guests. Yeah.
Well, I think it's hard, right? Because again, there's a lot of different audio tapes that are playing in our minds. And so, I forget that too. But we'll just keep being messy together and remind each other.
Love it.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tracy.
Thank you so much.
That's it for this week's Success is Subjective episode. I want to thank my guests for joining me on this week and for being willing to share your journey. This podcast would not exist if it weren't for people such as yourself. Stay tuned for our next episode where you can bet it'll be another amazing human sharing their personal story with the world. Make sure you check out the show notes where you will find contact information, website details, and all social media for our guest. Also, put a face with a voice by accessing their interview on the newly formed successissubjective.org website. If you're interested in being a guest on the podcast, you can email me at Joanna, Joanna, at successissubjective.org. I would also be remiss if I didn't tell you to check out the collegealternative.org and lilyconsulting.com websites for additional resources outside of podcasting. If you're listening to the show on Apple Podcasts, please do me a favor and subscribe. And while you're at it, feel free to leave a review. You can also download to listen to the Success is Subjective podcast on any other podcast playing app such as Audible, Google, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. Last but not least, Success is Subjective is listener supported, made possible by me and by you. You can support this podcast by joining the Patreon community at patreon.com/successissubjective. Thank you for tuning in, and remember, there is no single path through life. Success is what you make it.